Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Can with Mining Journal, and with me I have Peter Bryant, Board Chair for US-based energy transition and mining consultancy Clareo. This is part of a three-part series on mining's role in green industrialization and how it could transform Saudi Arabia. Today, Peter and I are going to discuss the fundamentals of this concept. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Chris. Great to be here and a great conversation to be had on a very important topic.
Fantastic. You've talked about mining as a driver for supporting direct services as well as non-related industries as well when you've been at the Future Minerals Forum and other public presentations. What are the fundamental pieces of the puzzle that have to be in place to make all those bits come together, especially around the non-related industries part?
Yeah, and thanks, Chris. I think it's all about kind of two aspects. I think one is around how you capture more of the value of the mining, so moving away from extract and ship to capturing downstream value. And that's a big fundamental focus of the Saudi Arabian initiative, as well as then building prosperity for the community and the region and the country beyond the life of mining. And both those things have been very elusive for the mining industry, to be honest, no matter where you look. So it's really providing opportunity for mining to being a catalyst, first for overall prosperity, and mining companies themselves kind of acting as a development partner. So that's the first fundamental thing, is mining companies changing their mindset to becoming development partners. What I mean by that is not necessarily paying for everything, but being the people that instigate, along with government, downstream value, other industries. So really, really important. There's two really fundamental things that are important to make this happen. One is obviously start with a multi-stakeholder, multi-owner dialogue, because you've got a deepen understanding and trust between everyone to make this work. And then they co-create kind of a shared vision and roadmap. And two good examples of that are the Impact Catalyst in South Africa that I mentioned in my paper, which is being many mining companies, non-profits, government, and the Mining Social Investment Framework in Zambia. Are both examples of where you do this. And then what they're doing is using mining wealth to build other sectors outside mining, tourism, agriculture. So when the mining industry's gone, those industries are thriving. The real important thing, though, is the role of government. So government's got to put in what I call the kind of policy and regulation that enables entrepreneurs to flourish, enables these new businesses to kind of build and grow. And also importantly, what is the public infrastructure? You need education, telecommunications, etc., for all of that to work. So it's a real partnership working together to make this happen. And I think it's really necessary for countries for that to happen.
What are the red flags if it's not going well? It sounds like it's mainly sitting with government to set up this framework and then for the mining industry to recognise that and to essentially play ball. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah, actually, I think it's kind of both playing together. So I don't think it is government setting up. I hate to use the word public-private partnership, but it's really, to me, I think there's a triangle of trust I always talk about, which is government, companies, and the communities. Everybody else, to me, is suppliers, all the different activists. They're all peripheral. You have to build the trust between those three groupings to make this work. So red flags are if that doesn't happen. So are there multi-stakeholder dialogues occurring? So red flags are the dialogues haven't happened. It's government telling people what to do. It's companies going, here's my plan. Do you like it? That doesn't work anymore. So you get community activism and action. That's a red flag. If communities are starting to be unsettled, that's a real red flag. And we see that in mining operations all around the world where communities stop operations. Government being too slow is another one where whatever regulations they had to put in, it's just not happening. So, but all of that, if you don't have trust between all the parties, fundamentally that's the main one. And I think it's easy to gauge, do you have that in place?
Okay. Saudi Arabia specifically feels like it's an opportunity to do these things well, obviously a massive extractive history and pedigree, but for mining, not so developed. And the intent feels like it's there to do these things well. What does it look like for Saudi Arabia if they're getting it right? Both what are the things that you're looking for to be in place? Obviously, those conversations, practically speaking, what would the development pipeline look like towards those supporting industries in that environment specifically?
Yeah. So I think Saudi Arabia is interesting. So it's a kind of two-part story for Saudi Arabia. One is what they're going to be doing in Saudi Arabia to develop their own industry, but the regional approach they're doing. So we had a ministerial roundtable had 60 countries represented from most of Africa, Central Asia. So, they want to take a regional approach. So within Saudi Arabia itself, I think they're putting the building blocks because their government's very fast at putting in new regulations. They have whole new mining laws to kind of make permitting not only fair, but fast. Because they are, the Saudis are the indigenous people. They are the First Nations of Saudi Arabia. So they have a better feel for this kind of dialogue to get you to this deeper understanding and trust. I think the key thing that's interesting to me, Chris, is that they are taking this regional approach because they fundamentally believe that countries that have resources like they do should be fundamentally wealthy as a result. And they kind of despair a little. How come all these other countries are poor and even maybe poorer than they were? So I think what they want to do is leverage what they're good at and say, we will help you extract your resources in a more modern mining way, in a way that's fairer to the communities where you retain more of the wealth. And on a regional basis, we each do what we do well so we can capture more of the downstream value. And then come up with a mechanism where even though some activity may happen in another country where the resources aren't, the value is shared back. So I think it's a really interesting approach. It's hard because it's not really been done ever before. So that aspiration is pretty bold.
A lot of the downstream aspirations in Saudi Arabia are they're grand. There is what you're talking about in terms of supporting infrastructure and ongoing industry. It's huge. They'll need a lot more metals. Looking at those areas of supporting regions, is it possible for that downstream industrialization to be shared across the region, or will it be a case of developing raw material extraction to feed the Saudi aspiration?
Yeah, it's a great question. One always has to treat people as being genuine. So I think, the Saudis definitely have expertise and experience from the oil and gas industry of capturing downstream value, in petrochemicals, refining. They do it all in Saudi Arabia. I think they recognize that countries that are infrastructure poor in Africa, whether it's power or other infrastructure, that it takes too long to build that. So why don't you take your minerals and move them for that downstream processing to Saudi Arabia? I think the difficulty is twofold in that, from what I can tell. One is, what's the mechanism and framework to share that value in an equitable way? And the second one is we have to overcome nationalistic tendencies, because I hear ministers going, yeah, this is a fantastic idea. And then 5 minutes later, they're talking about, we want to do this all in our own country. So the question, but I can tell from, certain countries, you'll get to the value of your resources way faster if you take a regional approach than I need to develop my own railroads, my ports, my energy infrastructure. It just takes too long. So, but there are some challenges in there, Chris, without question. So.
Sounds going back to the original point I think you made, Peter, around collaboration and having that dialogue.
Yep, totally. If you don't do that, this is kind of dead on arrival, right?
Peter, we've got more to cover. We've got several other interviews to do in this series, so we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time.
Okay, Chris, thank you.